Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another one of our weekly C3 Foundation live streams. And this one is going to be a bumpy ride, folks. Today, first of all, I guess before we get going, can everyone hear us fine? Claudia, say hello.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Okay, looks like the sound is good. We are live today. I do see that question in there because sometimes we do these watch parties and we'll do replays, but today is live. And so we are talking about shame and addiction stigma today. And this is going to be a wild one, guys. We're going to start off with talking about more of the head stuff, the statistics, the definitions, and then we're going to let Claudia take it away and really go for the heart of everything and why the personal effects that shame can have and how detrimental that can be to recovery. And along the way, because shame and stigma are so internalized, hopefully you don't feel like anybody's getting punched in the gut as you're looking at some of your own internal stuff, as we're talking about stuff that we've seen and experienced. And but if you do, definitely feel free to reach out to us afterward. We're here. Or if you have a good support system, talk about how this stream made you feel with your support system, because our intent is for this to be a positive discussion that can empower you to better deal with any shame and guilt that you're feeling because of stigma that has been heaped upon you or internalized. But
it trigger. It could be a trigger for you, and if it is, yes, yeah, it just some people talking about shame or thinking about their own shame will trigger an episode of that deep remorse, shameful feeling. So if that's happening to you, take a deep breath. Know that this is a loving, supportive environment, and we only want to let it out, not put it in.
Judgment-free zone here today. Judgment-free in the comments. Judgment-free here. So we will share. We're so thrilled that you guys are here. By the way, Claudia, I didn't tell you this, but earlier today we passed the 300 follower mark.
Woo-hoo!
Last year when we did our conference last year, we had somewhere between like 65 or 70. So that is amazing support that we're seeing. And we're seeing some gifted subs out there. Thank you, Pedrick. We've got quite a crowd and everybody's chattering, so this is awesome. Please, as always, if you have questions or comments, whether they're to us, whether they're to each other, chat amongst yourselves, ask us questions. We are, I'm watching the chat, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So, starting with shame. How many people out there in the chat have felt shame? You can little yes or a Y to raise your hand. Shame? Anybody? We might have a shame-free crowd out there.
Wow, okay.
I don't. Okay, we're starting to see some yeses. I was gonna say
I guess I'm the only one.
They're much better off than I am. Yeah. So.
It doesn't have to be addiction related. It could be anything.
Right. Anything. Honestly, I truly can't say I know anybody who truly feels no shame about anything whatsoever.
I had a long conversation with somebody this morning who said that they felt shame about not being more successful in life.
Yeah, it really does affect us all. But the definition of shame is a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. Stigma is more from an external point of view. It's a mark of disgrace that's associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. So it's no wonder why stigma is such a detrimental thing. I mean, a mark of disgrace.
And scarlet letter.
Exactly. And the reason that it's so important to look at stigma and to separate that as an external is because not only does addiction stigma cause a barrier to treatment, leads to discrimination and substandard care, but it's dehumanizing. And that dehumanization process causes people to internalize the stigma so that it results in a level of toxic shame that it becomes taken on as part of your identity of feeling like there's something wrong with you, or it leads to lying and humiliation and fear, and you get isolated and you toxically think about yourself, leading to perfectionism, feeling like you're defensive all the time. And all of these things not only can cause relationship problems, but let's face it, does anyone else think these all sound like reasons to drink? Reasons to check out?
Sure.
So, I mean, Claudia, you have been talking about your experiences for more than a decade now. Can you believe that?
I can't shut up about it. Apparently, it's the most interesting thing in my life. No, it's important for me to make it normal. I want to normalize discussion of addiction because it is so filled with shame and stigma. And the more we normalize it, the more we can share our experiences, the less toxic the environment is and judgy, frankly. And
you've been coaching. Yeah, we've had our yoursinclairmethod.com coaching up for it's been a year today, in fact, I believe. And you were coaching, kind of trialing it for almost 2 years prior to launching while you were looking for other coaches. Tell me how much the issue of shame has impacted and been a stumbling block for both yourself and for the people who you coach.
Well, I started informally coaching in 2011. So when I had a couple of years of successful TSM under my belt, I started reaching out to people, and people found me through, and then I was writing the book, and then my email address was in the back of the book. So this has been going on for quite some time, and this is such a negative impact on people. I know personally, but if somebody, you can see in somebody's face, someone you love, whether it's a parent or a sibling or a spouse or a child, you see in their face the disappointment. That invokes so much personal shame. And I love the definition, humiliation. You feel utterly humiliated. And of course, that is such an uncomfortable feeling for a human being to feel, that even though it's counterintuitive, it doesn't make sense. Yes, you will grab alcohol to then deaden those feelings. So for instance, I've had clients who had a big row with their loved one, or they slept with somebody, or it was inappropriate behavior at an office function or something, Christmas, whatever it is. And it has affected them so adversely that their drinking escalated on a nightly basis, because every time that thought bubbles up, that memory of the incident, whether it, whatever it was, whether it was the disappointing look in a loved one's face, the evening out where you made a pass at your friend's spouse. I mean, something just utterly, unbearable to think about. They grab the alcohol to just forget. So it's this circle of pain deadening, and when the thoughts start to come up again, you want to push them down again. This is why during recovery and when you're decreasing drinking using TSM, I see this all the time. People decrease their drinking so quickly, and buckets loads, decades of shame comes filling in their body, and they don't know what to do with those feelings. They don't know how to sit in it and experience it without something to numb them.
Well, and as we were preparing for this, some of those articles that we were looking at back and forth, I don't know if you had a chance to read the one that actually called shame a trauma response. And I was so glad to see that, because it is so visceral. And it can be so visceral that it can literally take you back into that moment in your mind and in your emotions, almost the same way as more of a complex PTSD, which is it's the PTSD version of death by 1,000 cuts, where it's just repetitive and becomes something that you take on. And so I thought that was a great way of looking at it. What are your thoughts of shame as a response to trauma?
Well, a lot of trauma. I know, myself included, many men and women that I coach or that I've spoken to over the years, for instance, were raped or molested, or inappropriate sexual attention from someone they knew or a stranger, and that resulted in trauma, but also shame. And both of those qualities, which are interlinked, obviously, the shame is a result of the traumatic incident, because they feel, did I ask for it? Because that's what society says. Was I dressed inappropriately? Was I too friendly with that adult? That's victims of sexual abuse, especially children, will take on the shame of it, and also the inability to freely talk about this incident that shamed them. It's also a matter of lack of control. You're not in control when someone is doing this to you. You are powerless. And so all of those associations and all of those feelings quite often will lead to that substance misuse, because they are trying to deal with it. But of course, you have this childlike mind that's never fully recovered from that trauma, much like people who do not deal with their PTSD. They're still stuck in that war zone. They're still stuck in that ICU, and they have not dealt with it. So you're really talking to somebody who's stunted, not emotionally, but stunted in a form within their spirit, that they're still in that age where they were abused and where they suffered that trauma. So there's a lot going on there, and the shame is something to immediately deal with by simply, I always tell people, none of this is your fault. Not this sexual abuse, not the addiction, the subsequent, substance misuse. None of it is your fault. You've got to take that out of the equation, but that is so hard to do, Jenny. I mean, we all know that when we failed a test because of something, or we didn't apply ourselves, or if we disappointed a parent by coming home late, those are little incidents of shame. But when you have something so debilitating, like you were gang raped, or something that was also public, or something that comes out in the press, or any of these, I deal with people who've been shamed publicly for being intoxicated in public, that their picture was in the newspaper. I mean, all of these things are very, very difficult to sort of get over. And it's a constant reminder. Think about how difficult the press can be in many countries. And think about people who have been dragged through, messy divorces and all, to child custody cases, all of this, and it's no surprise that years later you hear, guess what? They're now in rehab.
Yeah. And, and so that's true both for acute traumas where there's a singular situation, but also for the accumulated traumas. The parent who is neglectful, the person who you look up to and you want to share something with, and they shoot you down and make you feel like you're less than, whether that's your parent, your teacher, a sibling. And when you start feeling like you are worthless and you start becoming ashamed because you feel like you're not enough, as you continue to internalize these, you continue to relive that, again, back to the word feeling of humiliation that you felt, because that moment, those situations that maybe happened over and over where you felt like you didn't live up to someone else's standards and or your own standards, those can also just be traumatic over time and cause that continued shame.
Jenny, I have a friend who is in their 60s, and they still refer to the time in fourth grade that the teacher embarrassed them by saying that their written report was, whatever the adjective was, amateurish or childish.
For me, it was fifth grade.
Yeah,
Like all of my social anxiety comes back down to one spot. And while I was lucky enough to not get addicted, it did drive my early problematic, reckless drinking when I was younger, because when I was in fifth grade, that's when they started the honor roll. And so, the teacher said, "By the way, Jenny, stand up. Jenny's the only person in this class who made the honor roll. You should all be like Jenny." Well, there went my friendships. And so right there in fifth grade at a young age, I stopped learning how to deal with people because I felt like a pariah. And it wasn't until becoming, a teen, later in my teens, when I was like, oh, wait, if I have alcohol, I don't worry about that anymore.
Yeah.
I just happen to get lucky and not become addicted from it. But had that continued, that possibility was always there.
Sure.
Shame can come from from things that other people might think, well, that's no big deal. But if it's a big deal to you, it's a big deal. If it's a big enough deal to change the way you look at yourself, then that shame, that you've got to deal with it, or else it will never leave you alone.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, nothing is too silly or small. That's the thing that people have to realize. They have to identify where the first issue came from, and nothing is too small. I have people who say, well, I know this sounds ridiculous, but when I was 10, it's not ridiculous because you were vulnerable.
Absolutely.
That's why childhood trauma stays with you so long, is because you're forming things like trust. And if someone you're supposed to trust breaks that trust, like a parent or a sibling, you now have trust issues into adulthood. The first time a person cheats on you, it's very difficult to sort of go, oh, okay, well, nobody else is going to do that to me, because it viscerally kills you inside. It kills a person, a piece of you inside. So yes, you have to then say, okay, I'm not going to carry that mistrust into the next relationship. But boy, you are changed. You are changed. And if somebody in authority, like a teacher or a parent, breaks that trust with you, or disappoints you, or doesn't protect you, that's another issue. They didn't protect you. That is a feeling of, now all of a sudden we turn into the person who has to take care of ourselves for the rest of our lives. And we won't let anybody take care of us because we need to take care of ourselves because we don't trust anyone to take care of us. Now, total overcompensation for that one incident where, the parent left you in the supermarket. Okay, from now on, I've got a backpack with supplies. I used to carry around a suitcase as a child. How sad is that? A little miniature suitcase with food, water, sweaters and everything, because I got lost once in a department store. I mean, I thought, I can't manage by myself. If I get lost again, at least I'll have food and water. How sick is that for a 5-year-old?
Well, and let's segue into how okay, for the starting into and escalating problematic drinking. Let's start with how this trauma and how this shame as a child can escalate as you try to become the one that is fiercely independent and the one that is going to be in as much total control as possible, because out of the fear reflex that other people are going to let you down, and that you've got to push yourself that much harder because otherwise you'll never be enough. So talk about how that leads into problematic drinking.
Well, it leads into a lot of things, not just problematic drinking, but eating disorders. That's quite often both men and women come to me and say, well, it's the only thing I could control in my life. So in some way, not dealing with, now, how is a 6-year-old supposed to say to a parent, wow, you really dropped the ball on me and I'm feeling vulnerable and insecure, mom, because you left me somewhere or whatever, or you left, period. A parent leaves a child, that's abandonment. So all their life they're presuming everyone is going to abandon them, and it's very difficult at that age, and not a lot of people are offered therapy as a child. I don't even think it's something that most people can afford or think about. And parents quite often, especially nowadays, they're busy, they're both working, they're just trying to survive, so they don't see these things that happen to kids. And there's still also a very strong belief of, well, just buck up and it'll make them stronger, kind of thing. But these incidents don't. Once again, going back to whatever was your incident or multiple incidents is not silly, it's not small, it's something that has affected the rest of your life. And this can translate itself into wanting to numb your feelings because you don't know how to deal with that childhood trauma or that abandonment or that disappointment or loss or anger, all of that stuff. So, numbing oneself is something that is, once you try it, so you've got to, let's say you have a 15, 16-year-old who's been through something traumatic and they try alcohol for the first time. I'll have so many clients say to me, wow, the first time I ever tried alcohol, I felt like I could finally just forget, or I could finally fit in, or I finally felt normal.
Well, relaxed, comfortable.
Yeah, but what they perceived as normal was relaxed and comfortable. What it really was not thinking about their feelings, able to escape. So they found something that they could suddenly feel good. But instead of having the ability and the tools to say, hang on a second, why does something that deadens my emotions make me feel good? There must be something wrong with me when I'm sober, when I'm just in my own skin. So I need to deal with that before I start recreational use of substances, because but who has the knowledge to do that at 15 or 16 years old?
No one I know.
Nobody has that. No, unless they've seen it, adversely affect a parent. They might say, oh, this is why mom drinks every night, or this is why dad hits it hard on the weekends. He's not dealing with his stress. But what kind of insightful, brilliant teenager is that going to be that can possibly pluck that knowledge out of their own personal experience? So yes, I find a lot of people in my world of substance use disorders and eating disorders that have used this to placate and assuage all of this trauma that they just haven't had the capacity or the knowledge of how to deal with it in a better way. And we talk about that a lot, Jenny. We talk about, what can we do? This comes up all the time. What can we do besides drink? What's going to make me feel better? And, you don't want someone to develop a shopping habit or kleptomania or an eating disorder, or, binge eating or finding unhealthy habits to replace other unhealthy habits. You want them to find a way to deal with all this emotional shame, stigma, trauma, and come to terms with it while also reducing the negative impact that their drinking has had on them.
Yeah, and this goes back to what we were talking about when we were talking a few weeks ago about building a complex support system. You really can't deal with those feelings on your own.
No.
You need someone. It doesn't necessarily have to be a professional. It just has to be somebody that you can trust.
Yeah, that's hard when you have a drinking problem. It's really hard to know who's not going to judge you, who is not going to shame you, because I can attest to years and years of struggling. There were very few people who I felt comfortable with. And so what you do is you isolate. And it just gets worse and worse because you sit there alone, and every time one of those feelings comes up, or the thoughts or the memories of something shameful or traumatic, you drink.
And then the alcohol can both numb, or some people, what do they say? Sometimes you drink to forget, but you end up remembering.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's, yeah, the big crying dramatic, it's, yes, the you've seen it in movies portrayed. The person has too much to drink and they start weeping about someone who died or something they lost or some relationship that was destroyed. And yeah, because that's when they allow them, the alcohol loosens them up enough to feel. But in general, that's not a healing episode of crying.
Exactly.
It's not really.
It's counterproductive.
It may feel good to let it go, but then you've got the shame of crying in front of everybody and not really solving any of the problems, underlying issues from where that sprang.
And you've had this in a couple of your talks where you have mentioned people who have basically referred to themselves very negatively. We've seen people who have said, who feel so shameful that they actually say, I don't think I deserve help.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how shame and how judgment can be a stumbling block and actually undermine a person's attempts at recovery.
Well, the feeling of inadequacy when you're suffering from an addiction, the feeling of being worthless. I've heard people refer to themselves as, well, I'm just a piece of, what. Yeah, I don't deserve to be. Yeah, I don't deserve my spouse to stay with me. I don't deserve my kids. I don't deserve a job. This essence of saying you're not deserving comes from deep, deep shame. And until that is understood, that once again, this is not your fault. None of this is your fault. And the sooner you come to forgiving yourself, the faster you're going to be on your road to a really healthy recovery. And I'll tell you something, and I'm not saying it's easy. It's only in the past, I don't know how many years for me, that I've even had an inkling of forgiving myself truly. I've said it, I've tried it, I've made attempts at forgiving myself. I've certainly worked on forgiving other people, how they treated me during the worst of the worst. People who wanted to lock me out of my house when I was drinking and throw my belongings in the floor. People who wanted to force me into one of those punitive rehab facilities where, you're literally a workplace where you're mopping floors 12 hours a day and beaten. And I mean, people who really genuinely wanted to punish me because of my drinking problem. And I've worked on forgiving those people, but forgiving myself for being a failure, I think it's exactly why I put so much stock in being successful and working. One of my little stupid prides, and I say stupid prides in not in a shameful way, but simply a silly, prideful thing when I was still in my disease, was saying, oh, but I work and I've made money. And, as if any of that matters. What matters is your health and your sense of self and your love for yourself. And we don't see that. What we see is, well, I hear this from clients all the time. Well, it's not that bad. I mean, I've held down my job and I make 6 figures a year. And it's like, okay, that has nothing to do with what you're doing to your body and your soul by drinking so much, and what you're doing to your personal relationships, and how you're stomping down your feelings and your emotions, and how you're really not living. You're not living because you're not present, because you're stoned, you're high. So that is it's a huge issue. But with forgiveness eventually, and this is why people say recovery, this doesn't happen overnight. With the feelings that start to bubble up when drinking is not clouding your sense of self, and you can think clearly, and all these feelings start to come up, you really have to take that time and stop and just say, why is this making me uncomfortable? Okay, let's think about this, and then try to just forgive yourself with those words of saying, none of this was my fault. I've said it a million times, Jenny. You've heard me a million. How many times have I said, I didn't choose to be an alcoholic. I didn't ask to become an alcoholic. This was not my childhood dream. This was not something that I thought, wow, this sounds like a great plan. No, it happened. And now part of the process of putting my life back together again is to say, you know what? Let's make something good from it. Let's help other people, but also let's forgive and get rid of that shame.
And we've got a couple of good comments in there. Joyce says, I think forgiveness happens over and over again.
Yes, it does happen. Oh, good call, Joyce. It happens over and over again. And that means including forgiving other people, because they can't always act in the exact way that we need. And Jenny and I were discussing this right before we started. And I was saying, there are 2 people in my life that when I was going through particularly bad times, they just were there. And it was you and Holly. And I had enough shame and disappointment in myself for my behavior. And so much was riding on me just getting better at that moment, that the last thing I needed was somebody saying, I cannot believe you did that. Do you know what that could have done? Do you know, I can't tell you how many people in my life would say, you could have gotten in an accident. You could have killed somebody. You could have ruined your career. Do you know you could have lost your nonprofit foundation? I heard this from everybody, especially after I relapsed. Holly and Jenny were just like, hey, Claude, how's it going? And I want you to speak about how you went through that, and your feelings about it, because I think it's important to be that other person on the other side of it. But I know you had some more comments to talk about.
Well, the other one was just a comment from Rosanna that says it's so much easier to forgive others than to forgive myself.
Well, what you have to say once again, Rosanna, is none of this was my fault. I did not ask for this to happen. Due to some genetic inclination and the fact that you engaged in the behavior like 99.9% of other people in the world drink alcohol, not quite that many, but you know what I'm saying. The people that were doing the same behavior, but they weren't, the dice weren't rolled in so that they were going to develop a substance use disorder. So if it happened to you, that's your unlucky draw of the cards. It's not that you asked for it or you deliberately said you're going to hurt your loved ones by drinking too much. None of us go down this path of drinking when we pick up a beer at the age of 17 saying, you know what, this is going to lead me to ruin my marriage and get a DUI someday. That's just, it's just not in the cards. You're doing what everyone does socially. You just happen to have develop a problem over time. So you got to say, it's not my fault. I didn't ask for this to happen, and I'm doing the best I can to deal with it now, including dealing with the emotional repercussions and the shame and the stigma and forgiving myself. And that's so important to check in with yourself. When you start to feel that anxiety, and I know what that anxiety feels like, the shame, anxiety stemmed from shame, is that weird, uncomfortable feeling in your chest where you just want to get out of your skin and you want to do something to stop thinking about it. What I've trained myself to do, as uncomfortable as it is, to stop and to say, okay, I'm going to let it wash over me. I'm going to cry if I have to cry. I'm going to get angry if I have to get angry. I'm going to take 2 minutes out of my life because this is what I consider healing and forgiving. And I'm going to really listen to what those feelings are. So, Rosanna, if you can try doing that when they wash up and they come up, take a deep breath and just say, why is this bothering me so much? Well, the answer could be because it's unresolved. And in that case, you can make small movements or gestures toward resolving it, whether that means reaching out to the person. You know, these are tough conversations. I had a conversation with my mom the other day, and, you know, I wanted to start a conversation and saying, you know, I appreciate what you did, but if you deal with this in the future with your grandchildren, it might be better if you tell them first, I understand you're struggling. I love you so much. I am here if you need anything, as opposed to trying to fix it yourself in the only way that you know how to fix it. That's how people end up in rehabs, or worse, when they're taken by surprise. You know, this whole what's that crazy thing that they do? There was this TV series on it where they get you all in a room and they hijack you and throw you in rehab.
The intervention.
Intervention. Okay, so they yank you out of your life and throw you in a facility without telling you or sharing with you or talking to you about it or anything. Sorry, that's just inhumane. I think the first thing to do is just say, you know, so I was trying to tell my mom, I said, just if this happens, you know, somebody else in our circle develops a substance use disorder, just say, I'm here for you. If you need anything, let me know. And I love you. That's all you have to say. It's not your job to fix them. It's your job just to love them. And it didn't quite go the way I wanted it to go, but I made the effort, you know, I made the effort. And that helped me because I realized there's certain people in your life that are never going to get it, and they're never going to change. And that's okay, because you've changed. And now you've accepted that, and you've forgiven yourself and them, and you can move on and love them and talk about different things. But that's a hard place to get to. And I'm not making it sound like it was easy. Trust me, I'm 55 years old and I'm just understanding all this stuff now. So.
And Rosanna says, thank you very much. She needed to hear that.
You're so welcome, Rosanna.
So before I go into how I dealt with your relapse, can you give a brief background for anybody who might not know what you experienced?
So quite a few years into TSM, using TSM successfully, let me go all the way back. When I started TSM, I didn't know anything about drink logs or mindfulness or self-care or therapy or working drink, you know, anything. I popped a pill when I was craving alcohol, and I drank an hour later. That was pretty much my TSM experience. And I was lucky. I was really lucky that it worked so well so quickly, but I hadn't worked on anything else. And out of my shame and the stigma attached to alcoholism, I decided that I was going to save everybody else. And that was my penance for being an addict, for causing my parents so much shame and pain, and causing my friends who loved me and ruining relationships. That was my penance, was that I was going to go on this mission and I was going to tell the world about TSM and save as many people as possible, and that would save me. And that's a really unhealthy approach.
It's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. So fast forward to years later, I was helping people all the time. They had my home number, my cell phone number. I was getting texts and emails all day long. I wasn't charging for coaching sessions. I wasn't working out anymore. I was trying to figure out ways to fund C3 Foundation. I kept running into walls. I kept getting frustrated in my own career. I was not in a healthy place. I was just not in a healthy place. And that coincided with me being overseas being jet lagged, exhausted. And at that point, my mentor, very, very father like figure to me, Dr. Sinclair himself, um, died. And I was unaware that this was about to happen. And I spoke to him that night. And the shock, and I think my utter fatigue, my precarious grasp on my own life and my own health led me to say goodbye to him right before he died and go down to the bar without taking my pill and drink. And the shame of doing that when the person who saved my life died, and believe me, I heard that from people. How could you dishonor his memory like that? That was, how could you shit on his work like that? That is literally I heard from people. How could you dishonor him? How could you crap on him? How could you risk losing everything you've worked for? This is exactly what people in 12-step programs are going to jump on. You're going to ruin everything you've worked for. You are such a piece of shit. I mean, on and on and on and on. That's already what I was dealing with. And so, I mean, I reached out to one person to tell them what happened, and that was the response that I got. How could you dishonor his memory? You get your act together. You pull yourself together. How dare you? I mean, screamed at me.
Wow. And I didn't even, this is a part of this that I've not even heard before. Wow. Oh, yeah.
So what did that do? That made me want to drink more. It made me want to numb myself even more. It was not a good experience. I was petrified of losing C3 Foundation, of losing respect from all of the people that I've helped. And then I decided, screw it. After I had healed a little bit, I thought, you know what? I better talk about this, because it's important to know that this path is a lot more involved than just popping a pill and waiting an hour. And that incident,
which lasted how long again?
A few weeks. Plus the recovery time, plus me trying to get home, plus the people who were helping me in the UK contacting my mother and father, which was devastating for me, sending written reports to my mother about every single detail of my behavior, which, was incredibly traumatic. And she subsequently would bring back up again, calling my father, who was battling cancer, and saying, pick up your daughter now. My father, crying on the phone saying, I can't fly, to me. I can't travel, Claudia. Talk about feeling like a piece of, what. I mean, the shame, this was never ending. I mean, this wasn't like some easy fix. This was coming at me in every single conceivable way. When you talk about the ultimate test, I think this was the ultimate test of my recovery, of my life, because it was all encompassing. Every single aspect of my life was affected by this incident, and it traumatized me. I mean, it traumatized the crap out of me. And had repercussions that lasted, and people kept bringing it up and kept bringing it up and kept bringing it up, and family members and this. Well, you remember this, and you remember, and I had to face Dr. Escapa. I had to face everybody. I had to face you. I had to face all my friends. I had to face my family. I had to be, and I was still recovering from it. I was still not only physically recovering, but emotionally, I was still dealing with it myself. Why couldn't I deal with loss? What was the trigger there? What was this feeling of abandonment? What was this feeling of failure? Why did I do that? Why? The big why. Why did it happen? And with it came, out of that horrendous experience, came a new life for me, which has been so much healthier. I took back my life. I slowly but surely, and now it's accumulated and only recently, removed myself from social media. I took back my workouts every day. I took back my me time. I started swimming again. I started doing my Pilates again. I started treating myself better again. I started really trying to meditate, praying more, doing all the things that brought me comfort and joy. And I took my life back because of it. So once again, we get the phoenix rises through the ashes. But those ashes were that was a debilitatingly embarrassing, shameful, stigma-ridden episode of my life. So sharing it is so important to me, because not only to teach loved ones like you, Jenny, how to deal with someone that relapses, but also to teach the person who relapses how to forgive themselves and how to take a lesson from the incident, apply it to their lives, and actually end up happier and more healthy.
And to people who are out there who are family, friends, spouses of someone who's on the Sinclair method, at the time, and here's the thing, Claudia and I have never actually talked about this from my perspective before. What she's about to hear from me and what you hear, it's the first time for everybody. So when
by the way, my fault. No, seriously, it is totally my fault.
There's no fault is the thing, though.
I mean, at some point, I think I addressed it maybe in a couple like little emails. I would say, I'm so, whatever. This is a mess I'm going to clean up, or I'll blah blah blah, or I'm doing this, and in my way of saying, just hang in there, Jenny, just hang in there. But you're right. I should have probably called and said, you know what, let's talk about this. But to be honest.
But here's the thing, and this is what I want to get across to everybody. It wasn't about me. It's not about you when your loved one has what you might consider an epic failure, or instead of calling it an epic failure, consider it an epic crisis. Because yes, Claudia mentioned a lot of things that she had thrown at her. I could have said, well, I gave up what I was doing for my graduate studies to change my entire studies to do this. And now what, you're doing this? I could have focused on the things that affected me. But it was never about me. My friend was in crisis. That was my focal thought. I put an international phone plan on my cell phone so that I could get updates. I was getting 12 to 15 emails over the course of a couple hours with updates, and knowing that every single time my phone rang, my text message came through, or I saw certain names in my email, there was that fear that if I opened it, that the words were going to be, Claudia is dead. It was crisis mode. It's scary as hell. I understand that. I understand that there is that reaction to put up the walls, to try to fix, to say, well, that happened, and so here are the parameters under which I am going to support you. But controlling and putting those barriers up between you, saying, well, it has to work within this amount of time. You can't do that again. That's not supporting, that's controlling. And again, that means it's no longer about the person who is in crisis. You're making it about you.
Yeah.
It is still important to practice self-care. It is still important to put your boundaries, because if you exhaust your emotions and your mental and emotional capacity And let's face it, some of this can be physically draining as well. If you exhaust all of that, then you can't be there to support your loved one or your friend or your sibling or your spouse anyway. So you do have to take care of you. But in the moment of crisis, you've got to remember that it's not about you.
How do you think you knew that, Jenny? I mean, was it just a gut feeling that you had of how to handle the situation, or did you ever in your life have something that prepared you for this?
I stepped back and I looked at the entirety of the situation. Mm-hmm. And when I found out that your parents had been involved in all of it, because it was an epic logistical mess because of flights getting canceled and inability to, you were simply incapable of traveling alone for a while because the physical nature of what happened and its physical drain on you. Mm-hmm. It wasn't possible. Like if you had tried to get on an airplane, they probably wouldn't have permitted it. Right. And it was international travel and it was last minute and things were getting changed and all of those things. And so I had to step back and say, what is my priority here? Is my priority making sure that I'm going to have a job long term or that this is going to fall apart, or is my priority my friend's wellness? And I looked at what the contributing factors were. And I recognized working with you, I mean, by this point, you and I had already, we've always made a really good team of when one of us is starting to burn out, the other one says, all right, take what you need, take your time. What can I take off your plate? We have done this back and forth for almost 8 years now, and we have gotten really good at it. But the things you were doing right then, the counseling, the emails, the phone calls, I couldn't do any of that. Yeah. We were at a spot where I could not take anything off your plate. Yeah. Workwise, you were giving from an empty cup, and I already knew you were burning out.
Doing it for the wrong reason. I was doing it because I still hadn't dealt with my own shame and guilt.
But even for the right reasons, it doesn't change that you were trying to give from an empty cup and you were breaking up the cup pieces to try to give them away too. And you were in a vulnerable position there, and I knew that. And then Dr. Sinclair's passing, even though you knew that eventually it was going to happen, you did not know that it was going to happen that you thought you were going to be able to go see him first.
Well, ironically, this is, I don't feel at liberty to discuss his private life, but he ended up doing what my dad did in April of last year, which is they both were dying of terminal cancer. And I just didn't know he was doing it that day, and I didn't have time to mentally prepare.
And you were so thrown for a loop. This was literally, and you said it before, the man you credited to saving your life. He was a mentor. He was a friend. He was somebody that you looked up to, somebody that you were working day in and day out through exhaustion. Yeah. To build his legacy and take that as far as you could take it. And then you were hit with the most devastating news you could have about him. Who wouldn't want to check out? Who wouldn't want to? What you were going through was a normal human reaction. And when I took all of those other things into consideration, this was clearly not a failure of the Sinclair method.
No.
This was the culmination of life grabbing you by the scruff of your neck and tossing you around like a rag doll.
Yeah.
This and by looking at it that way, when I found out that your parents had been involved, I actually wrote a letter. I don't know if it was ever passed to your parents, but I wrote a letter and gave it to Holly to use her discretion whether to give or not. Whether she did or not, I may never know, because it really doesn't matter at this point. But I wrote them a letter saying, listen, this is what's really happened. This is that Claudia has given so much of herself that she has not left anything to take care of herself. This is chronic burnout because she is pushing herself so hard to do so much for so many people. This is stress. This is devastation at losing someone that she cares about so very much and so deeply, who has changed her life for the better. This is not about Claudia relapsing. This is more of Claudia is having a breakdown because of all of these other things. And alcohol simply happens to be involved. This is not a relapse. This is a breakdown.
I never knew you wrote that letter. That's incredibly insightful of you, because at the time, in retrospect, I can see where I was heading. Of course, hindsight is always clearer. But yeah, it was a accumulation of just thinking, if I saved one more person, I would save myself. And it just one more person. Oh, it's 2 a.m. I'll return their call. Oh, they're in Iceland. No problem. Oh, yes, let's send this email out. I mean, I literally, and that's just somebody who's doing that for all the. You can't save anybody else if you don't save yourself first.
Right.
You have to be your priority, and you have to do your own work before you can be healthy enough. But we didn't know any of this. I didn't know any of this going into it. I just thought I was doing a mitzvah, that you got to give back in life, I mean, let's think back to when I first started talking about TSM, and I said, for me, it was all biological. I was completely wrong. So that crisis, that breakdown was a chance to get better and to be a better person and to be a better coach and a better help and a better daughter and a better everything.
Yeah. And I didn't know what to do. I have people in my family. I've known people who have struggled with addiction to alcohol, but I had never been witness to a full-fledged crisis like this. And the impetus is, should I redirect the contact forms to me? Should I do? And I'm like, everything that I could do to try to fix the situation can be seen as trying to fix, trying to help, or piling on. And let's face it, if your family member or your best friend were in a car crash and the EMTs are working to make sure they survive, is that when you're going to start talking about, you kind of drive too fast? Maybe if you... No, your first priority, if you are truly wanting to support that person, is their wellness, is allowing them the space to say, this is what you can do for me, or this is what I need, but it's not you that can provide this. It's such, I hear this all the time, and I know you do too, Claudia, because you'll get the emails and calls from family members.
Yeah.
My son is drinking too much. What can I do? What have I done to cause this? As a refrain from parents.
It's not only the what have I done, but it's the why is he doing this to himself and to us? It's very unique that you had the generosity of spirit and the knowledge to say, you know what, there's nothing constructive that's going to come out of me harping on Claudia. She knows what she did, and what's going to be good is for me to just be a solid force of support.
Stability, showing some neutral
Exactly.
stability
Neutral
was the
stability.
only thing that I could think of that I could do,
Yeah.
short of you telling me that you needed something from me.
Well,
I let you know I was there, and I've got this, Claudia. You take care of you.
yeah. How beneficial would it have been for you at that point when I just got back to LA, because I managed to, withdraw enough and taper down enough to get on an airplane? How positive would it have been for you to say, you know what, Claudia, I'm not going to work with you anymore because this has really shown me that you're not reliable.
Yeah. Which is, I'm sure, a fear that you probably had at the time. Because you had no idea what level of information I was getting through everything.
All I had to do is, no, I knew that the two individuals caring for me were telling the entire world of my every friend and every relative I had exactly what was going on, which is a bone of contention for me, because it was like, can I have a modicum of privacy? Because now people are calling me really worried. Not everybody needs to know this, but I'm still very appreciative of everything they did for me, but it was just hard for me to get yelled at from my parents and people that they were telling what exactly what was going on minute by minute. So that was hard, and that's my own, once again, it's my cross to bear because I put myself in this situation. But it was very refreshing and nice just to have you quietly there, and just to know that you were quietly there running things and that you didn't leave. And I think that a lot of people, when they're going through this with loved ones, they will use these threats thinking that that's going to really shape the person up. If you don't stop drinking, I'm leaving. Okay, that's not helping anything, because at this point, that person believes that they don't deserve you anyway. So
right.
If you leave, it's only going to be
confirming their fears,
confirming their failure as a human being, their worthlessness, confirming their shame, everything. So, or taking it personally, like, I don't know why you're doing this to the family. Okay, the person is not actively trying to destroy their family. That's I keep trying to make that, and it's so hard. I mean, when your loved one is destroying the very fabric of your family from their drinking, it's really hard to take a high road and say, I'm here to love you and support you. What can I do? Of course you're going to worry. Are they adversely affecting the children? Are they going to get in a car accident and ruin our life? Are we going to be sued and lose all of our money? Are we going to lose our house? Can they even work? Can they provide? I mean, these are all really, really genuine fears that people are.
And I definitely felt that. I was fearful with every communication. But I recognized that my fear, any trust that became shaken, or any insecurity issues that I felt, those were my feelings to deal with. And I had to be the one to deal with the fear, to say it, because let's face it, trust, I feel like people have this lofty idea of trust is something that, it's earned and it's kept and it's broken, and trust is so multi-layered.
Sure.
It is so multi-layered. And it's funny because I'm both an incredibly skeptical, waiting for the shoe to drop kind of person, and yet on the other side, I'm also a very trusting person. For instance, I always joke around about trust when it comes to my marriage. My wife is a massage therapist. She literally rubs other people's naked bodies for a living. If I have trust issues with that, I can't, like, it would drive me mad. I have two choices. I can either have the trust that she's a professional and she's doing her job and she's really damn good at it, or I need to not be with somebody. Again, trust issues are internalized, and we always want to talk about how another person breaks the trust. But trust is something that we do, that only we can control, and it is independent of other people's actions. Now, you can, if they do things, the trust that you control of not trusting them is a legitimate response, but still, that is your choice to make. Another person cannot, control whether or not you trust them. The most trustworthy person in the world can be mistrusted if you have trust issues. So I knew that if I sent you an email and you didn't respond right, if my first instinct was, oh God, has Claudia gone off the rails? That literally has nothing to do with you. That would have everything to do with me. And keeping that in the forefront of my mind made it easy to remind myself, no, Claudia has a job outside of C3. She can't always answer emails right away. If she's in the studio or on set, it's not happening. If Claudia is asleep, if Claudia is taking care of herself, if it was a choice and an effort that I had to make to say, I need to not jump to conclusions. If it's coming from my fear, my trust or insecurity,
that's hard.
Keeping it on you is counterproductive.
Yeah, but imagine if, for instance, let's say somebody's drinking place was their garage, right? It's going to take time. If your loved one goes to the garage for a legitimate reason, you're immediately going to jump to, did they hide some booze in there?
Right. Are
they drinking? And that's suspicion, and that, do you want to get close to them and smell to see if they just drank? And that takes
It's
time.
Not easy. It definitely takes effort. But I would rather have someone take advantage of my trust because I trusted them to begin with than to undermine trust in a relationship because of my own actions.
That's a difficult thing for people.
It is.
To know how to do.
It absolutely is. And Jeanette asked if there's a way to share this. Yes, this is going to be available for replay on our page, and I am going to have it up on our YouTube within the next couple of weeks. So yes, this will definitely continue to be available. So it really does help when you're on the outside looking in to try to remind yourself it's not about me. It's not about me. And my goodness, if for some reason it is about you, then definitely don't add shame. Look and see how you triggered, and try to work from there. But as it is, about 80% of every human being's internal chatter is negative. Yeah. We think poorly about ourselves.
All the
time. We think the worst of others. The guy who cut you off in traffic is an a-hole, not, oh my gosh, he's, rushing to go see a loved one in the hospital. It's always the worst scenarios that tend to go through people's heads. And really the first step in trying to get past that is just acknowledging that, because if you never acknowledge it, you can't check yourself.
Yeah, Jenny, let me interject there, because that's something very interesting that I found is a practice. Once again, we talk about practicing until it becomes second nature. If you stop yourself every time you have negative self-talk, you will be absolutely floored by how many times it bubbles up every day. You will, I mean, the majority of the people, some of you may not, this may not happen to you, but I'll tell you something. It's like, even the little things like, well, why didn't they return my tech? Oh, I guess they're too busy for me. Even the sarcasm you put in your head, or oh, I wonder what they're doing, or you jump to some sort of bizarre fantasy where this person massively disappoints you, or you're sitting in your car and you get jacked up about this person who's ruining your day by driving too slowly, instead of thinking maybe they have a cauldron of soup in the front of their car.
Right.
Just chill out. And it's always this like, oh my gosh, if somebody looks at you rudely, you don't know what they're going through, and you've got to have some sort of deflection of saying, this is not meant to be something at me. But once again, you hear the voice and you stop yourself and make yourself laugh about it. That's what I do now. This happens to me a lot when I'm falling asleep. I'll start thinking of things I should have, would have, could have, people, the little indiscretions or little things that I want to, and you start spinning. I call it the committee. And I lay there in bed and it's like, well, that didn't happen. And well, what if I didn't get that? Well, I don't think that person likes you very much. Well, and I'll just start laughing. I'll laugh at it. So I'll just start laughing and saying, oh, here we go again. And that way I can feel like I'm addressing it, I'm noticing it, and I'm lightening it and letting it go.
And that's a great idea. And so, we have spent more than an hour on the heavy parts of the power that shame can have on our lives, and let's shift now more to, so how do you get past it? Our number one bullet point on our list here was in all capital letters. Your addiction is not your fault. That's that's something that put it on a Post-it and put it in your whatever mirror you look at most. Put it on your coffee pot in the morning. Put it where you're going to see it and remind yourself until you can take it from here in your head and move it to your heart and truly understand that it is not your fault. And if you tried other treatments out there and you relapsed, Claudia, what's the answer to that one?
What? Get back on the wagon.
It's not your fault.
Not your fault. Yes, of course. No, if you tried any other treatment and they say that you are the one that failed it, no, the treatment failed you. It's not your fault. That one just didn't work for you. People come to me all the time and say, oh my God, I tried AA so much and I just couldn't do it. Well, okay, it didn't work for you. It wasn't about you not trying. It wasn't about you not making an effort. It was that wasn't the support you needed. Maybe you need a medication. Maybe you need some therapy, whatever. Don't worry about it. Move on.
Right. And we see people who do everything right on the Sinclair method, and it ends up that it's just not the right treatment for them. And thank goodness we now have such a great network of doctors that also understand other addiction medications.
There's a dozen other methods you can use. There's at least 6 other medications and methods and mixtures of things. And so don't panic. And I try to explain to people, all of these things combined created your alcohol use disorder. The many, many times of drinking, the memories, the associations, the triggers, the emotions, all of this stuff, your age, your metabolism, your history, your family, every single thing contributed to where you are right now. That is not necessarily going to disappear magically in a couple of months with one specific thing. You might have to add stuff to it. You might have to take things away, but a lot of it during that process is always coming back to this, to you saying, am I feeling shame? Am I feeling disappointment? It's not my fault. Am I feeling like I'm a failure at this particular thing? I stood up my therapist. It's not my fault. Now you have to reflect and say, why? I keep telling people the most important question you should ask yourself all day long. Why? I want to have a drink. Why? I'm feeling crappy about myself. Why? Keep asking yourself that. That's the only way you're going to have the time and the self-reflection.
And it's not easy,
No,
and
it's not easy.
it's hard.
Say why all day long, but if you do it, you'll find little answers come right up to the surface, and you're like, okay, get in the habit of asking why. Why do I feel uncomfortable? Why do I feel shame? From what? Think about it. Sit in it.
And if you feel ashamed over a specific thing or thing you said or thing you did, accept responsibility. See what lessons you can learn from it so that you can do better in the future, and then have an Elsa moment and let it go. Just let it go.
That's not easy. I've taken my crisis and told myself that, in some way, as heinous and horrendous as that was, I can now use it for the good of other people. And a lot of clients actually trust me more because I haven't had a perfect journey. So sharing this story makes people understand that nobody is infallible. Everyone is fallible. Everybody will make mistakes along the way in their recovery. Everyone will take roads that perhaps they shouldn't have.
And the thing is, everybody does that even without an addiction. So if you think it's just because people are addicted, get over yourself. All you're doing is adding stigma and shame, because it's a human condition, with or without addiction. These are things we all do.
Look at how many people always say, oh my God, for years, I always chose the wrong partner. I mean, I was really attracted to losers, Well, funny that you can say that now in hindsight, but you don't, you can forgive yourself and say, I must have had something to learn from that. And what I learned is I now know how to say no, and I know who to choose that makes me happy, and I demand better treatment from my partners. That's a learning process.
Yeah.
So is recovery.
Boundaries are not easy to define, let alone enforce. And it's something that I think most people struggle with for a large portion of their lives.
Absolutely.
And as Claudia mentioned, when you're ready, you practice the introspection. That's the why. That's the why she's talking about. Can you look and figure out where that shame started? And that can be a terrifying process, So again, it goes back to making sure that you do have a support system with somebody that you can trust, because as you go through and dig, it could be painful. It could stir some stuff up that you might not be ready to deal with, and now you've got it there in front of you, and you've got to figure out what to do about it. And so that's where making sure you have good support and family members, that's where being a good support and saying, I'm not going to judge you. This is a judgment-free zone. I'm going to listen, and I'm not going to try to fix you. I will just be here for you. You tell me what you need from me. And again, that can also be hard for the support system, especially if you're still raw from a crisis moment. Because I think I tend to look at them more as crisis moments than relapses. Relapses make everything sound like it's just about the alcohol. But as a crisis moment, more often than not, your loved one, your child, your parent, your sibling, your friend is hurting. They're hurting.
And a lot of times the person who is suffering the crisis will remember things in a much more exaggerated fashion. Sometimes this is not true. Like in my crisis, it was definitely a huge event. But I've had clients say to me that they had a shameful incident occur. Maybe they thought that they were out of control at a wedding or something like that. And they were deeply shamed, deeply humiliated. And when they finally had the courage to say to somebody that they think they adversely affected during that event, that wedding, I'm so sorry because I was so out of control that night, or I really apologize. My drinking really made an effect. That person said to them, "What do you mean? Everybody was drunk." and it's like here they were carrying around the weight of the world because their perception was like, "Oh my God, I ruined the night." Now, I'm not saying go out and get loaded and ruin your sister's wedding, but I'm saying sometimes just by acknowledging it and talking to someone you trust and saying, I really feel bad about what happened. You never know what they're going to say. They might be the person who says, "You know what, we all make mistakes. It's no big deal. We love you." But, they might be that person that you need to say that. And you might be remembering it in a much more shameful way because that's what we do.
Well, and also because being impaired, while you are impaired, you're less likely to really notice truly what the other people are doing.
Exactly. But can you imagine carrying this around for 20 years and finally saying, "I just want to apologize for being such a mess at your wedding." And the person said, "What are you talking about? Everybody was wasted at my wedding." It's like, oh my God, for 20 years I've carried around this shame.
And building supporting relationships around you, whether they're your peers, your friends, your family, it really doesn't matter. If you have support around you, they can help give you that outside perspective so that it's no longer the exaggerated version in your brain. And that can help you let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have, as we put in in our complex support system, which if you haven't watched that, it is still available on our Twitch, and I think I've got it up on our YouTube as well. Having multiple forms of support is so critical because if one person in your support might have been involved in your crisis, you have other support to turn to. You have people who fill different roles in your support, and that can help you keep your shame in check and realize that, okay, again, if it's something from a specific event, you can look at it and it helps to be able to look at it in a different way. If there's something that you need to fix or take accountability for, then you can, and you can learn from it and do better. As long as you are learning and trying to do better, if you want to do better, that is the single most critical piece. You might not always do better, but at least if you want to do better, then you're going to keep trying. And it takes so much courage to continue trying, especially when you've got people saying that, reinforcing your fears that you're broken or worthless, because you are enough. You are enough. You are valuable and important, and you are worthwhile, and you are trying, and not everyone tries. That spirit of wanting to try to better yourself and to make your health better and your mental and emotional quality of life better and be the you that you want to be. You're never going to get there if you don't want it. So wanting it is what propels you to take every step, whether it's big or small.
Yeah, the hardest thing to deal with is someone who's given up.
Yeah. It's also the saddest because
Yeah,
a
you have to,
person who has given up has
oh,
just had untold repetition of lies that
yeah,
they're not worth it.
yeah, or they yeah, they just don't, yeah, they don't believe that they're worth one more try, or they don't have any support. That's the bottom line. If you have no support, you can get to the point where you've simply given up. And I've dealt with people who just say, you know what, I give up. I'm just going to die. I'm just going to drink myself to death. It's a really, really hard place to come out of, to dig yourself out of. Sure, you know what? We would love every single person that we help with TSM to be motivated. Motivation is what keeps you going. It's what makes for a wonderful coaching client. It's what makes for a good partner, for a good friend. Is motivation to make each other happy, motivation to keep healthy. Motivation is the key. But if you have no more motivation, no more desire, you have given up on everything. And believe me, I've been there in my drinking history, where I literally would lie down and think, I just want to die. I want to die, because this is the worst. This is the lowest depth of misery. And I will argue with anybody that addiction is the lowest depth of misery. Not being in control of your brain, being hijacked, doing something that you know is bad for yourself, is really the lowest depth of misery. And it's very natural, including the fact to add to it a depressant like alcohol, and you're lying there wallowing in this self-pity of just saying, I'm not even worth saving at this point because I'm just worthless. Really tough to dig yourself out of that. So the
And
people who have even a shred of hope out there, hang on to that.
and when you're in that state, you're already carrying so much shame,
Sure.
so much self-loathing, that to get shamed from an outside source.
Ooh, not good. No, no, no. That's when loved ones have to step in and say, we love you. We need you. You serve purpose in our lives. We will do anything you need, but we love you. We need you. We support you. You are valuable. You know, a boss could say that to an employee before they go, you know, they try and get better with medication or whatever. If a boss is supportive of their employee who's drinking too much and saying, you know what, you are such a great worker. I cannot wait to have you back and healthy. That one sentence could motivate that individual to stay compliant, to stay motivated, and to recover, and know that they have their job when they get back to work, or when they are feeling better. I mean, that people don't understand the power of words.
Yeah.
Just that alone of saying, you know what, you are so great. We're waiting for you. We're in your corner. We're rooting for you. We love you. Fabulous.
And
Now
that's, you know, I know that there are some out there, especially in the entrenched traditional treatment world, who would call that enabling. But that's not enabling. That it's giving space and support to allow the person you care about to recover.
Yeah.
Without piling on. So just to let you know, Claudia, because I know that because of your internet, you don't sit there with the Twitch open.
No, I don't.
We have just been rated for the very first time.
Rated.
That means that somebody else ended their stream and brought some of their followers on over with them when they decided to head on over to our channel. So our very first raid ever. So
I said rated, like
rated.
We got 4 stars. Okay,
Yes. So Letitia Lemon, hopefully I'm saying that. Brought over. It says rating with a party of 5, and Letitia says, I've met people who have been in that mindset, and I've met people who haven't made it out as well.
It's a really, really horrific thing to talk to someone who's given up all hope, and I have had success cases of loved ones and also of clients that have dug themselves out of that. One of the biggest, starts to that is to try and wean them off the alcohol, which is a massive depressant, and to give them something to believe in and some consistency. So, you know, when people are going through that self-hatred and everything, to have an outsider, maybe not even somebody close to them, but somebody like me say, I believe in you, and I support you, and I'm here literally for whatever you need. Anything, to be able to cling on to one thing. It's like you hear stories about people who are dying and just waiting for their child to give birth so they can see their grandchild before they die. We have these heroic feats of somehow, holding through the worst of the worst. If I could just last one more day, I'll get food or water. If you are going through a period where you've given up all hope and you're stuck in this miasma of addiction and self-hatred and shame and humiliation, you need something to believe in. You need a branch held out to get you out of the quicksand. And all of us listening right now can do that for somebody who we see as struggling. All of us can offer them hope, offer them motivation, offer them love, offer them support. Be like Jenny, quietly just being there. I refer a lot to my friend Holly, who took me to my first and only medical detox. She was cracking jokes as we were going, and it felt so normal that for one glimmer, one moment, I felt, oh my God, I can get through this, because she was acting normal. She wasn't.
Holly has that presence about her too.
Of just, yeah, well, everything's fine. In fact, while we were driving to the detox, she was saying to me, to make me feel better, she was saying, well, I've got a real big addiction to chocolate. It's bad. It almost killed me. I'm a diabetic now. And I was thinking, oh my God, she's so sweet, trying to make me feel better about being a total drunk, by comparing this to eating too much chocolate. And I was like, I just remember that made me feel just quietly loved. So we can do that for someone in our lives who's suffering. And Jenny, you did it for me. Holly did it for me. If you have somebody in your life who feels worthless or shamed or humiliated, just tell them it's not their fault and that you're there for them, whatever they need. That's all you need to do.
Absolutely. So let's see. We have Medic, who is also Thorlar's moderator here with us today. I know you haven't been able to see it, but there has been a whole lot of chatter in our chat area, which has been wonderful today. And Letitia mentions that she's like, this is also something pretty personal for me too. So any way I can help raise awareness, no matter how small, I'll do my best to. She was playing Fallout before ratings, so it felt very fitting.
Is it the Fallout 4 that I'm in, I wonder? That's funny.
Possibly. So does anyone have any questions or anything, what you if you're looking to find better ways to support your loved one, if you're anyone have a question about how to better deal with your own internalized shame, we've got Claudia for about another, according to my clock, 12 minutes before she has to get on the road. We don't usually run this long, but I think that we knew coming into today that we were going to run long, and I'm sure we will in a couple of weeks when we tackle all of the hard questions.
I knew I was going to cry, get a little teary, and and I knew that this would probably evoke a lot of emotions in people listening as well. And I hope that it didn't. I hope that it brought comfort and not a trigger of something negative. Once again, this is a really safe environment, and the reason why we do these discussions is to bring it out in the open, to reduce shame and stigma, and to give you a safe place to talk about your own feelings and to listen to real incidents of people who really have been going through this. And it is a time also, whether or not you're suffering from a substance use disorder, to take these little lessons, because they apply to everybody's life. If you start hearing the negative self-talk, if you start feeling shameful about something or regretting something, take that moment and stop and ask yourself why. Trust me, it'll give you answers to these questions, and it'll help you along your road of a gooder and better quality life ahead of you.
So here's a question, and this one I'm actually surprised I didn't put into our lineup because it's actually one that we get a bit. Is there any advice for giving support long distance? I have a friend I'm trying to support, but interactions are limited to online at the moment. Well, one of the thing I will say, if you've been with us this whole time and heard how I dealt with Claudia's crisis, Claudia was in the UK and I was in Florida. Claudia lives in California and I'm in Florida. So literally all of the support I've given Claudia has all been through distance. Just find the communication method that works best for you. If they're limited to online, sometimes just put the email out there, put the Facebook message or whatever online tool you're using out there, and know that you may not get an immediate response, and as difficult as that might be, sometimes you just have to sit with that, but knowing that you're there.
Yeah, it's not.
That's all you can do.
It's not about getting a response. And I even the people that I was doing the TSM buddies with, that I was bringing through an alcohol-free week, what they said really was helpful is just knowing, if I sent a text thinking of you, a heart, a smiley face, whatever. I mean, it really depends on where your friend is in this experience. If they're going through a relapse and they're actively drinking round the clock, it might not be easy to they're not going to log into Facebook and see your messages there. So if you have the ability to send a text or an email just saying, thinking of you, I love you, that is more powerful than you would ever know.
Even if they never respond.
Yeah.
And that can I understand that can produce some anxiety and fear. Did they get it? How did they receive it? But again, it's back to having to remind myself, it's not about me.
No, it's about the person, and just understand. It's much like when somebody loses a loved one. You don't inundate them with phone calls saying, how you doing? How you feeling? Do you want to come over? No, you gently say, I'm here if you need me. You drop off food to their house. You don't make them talk to you or communicate with you, because maybe at that moment they're having a good moment. Maybe they're curled up in a ball crying. This is not about you. So you just lend quiet, solid, consistent support. That's the best you can do, even long distance.
Yeah, the more you can frame your communications as not requiring effort on their part, because they're already in crisis mode, and any effort that you're asking of them can be detrimental.
Yeah.
So it's not easy. It is a very difficult line to walk.
Imagine saying that. I know you're in the middle of a bender, but you need to call me back.
And yet that can be the tone sometimes of people's communications.
Yeah.
And, so we've got, sorry, my mic arm again is in front of here, let me change this a little bit. Now I can see the comments without obstruction and bopping my head around. So Albrecht says, hey, thank you for the stream. Sorry if this is a bit taboo. I'm very ashamed about this. At the moment, I'm suffering from porn addiction. Most of my day I spend browsing porn. My low point was actually starting to share it on Facebook. My family has cut contact with me because they were being shunned by the church community.
Well, did you know that the Sinclair method works? for online and porn addictions? It does. I had one young client who had alcohol and porn addiction and used naltrexone in a targeted manner for that. So that's uh, just a piece of knowledge for you to have in case you wanted to try it. It will stop the reinforcement of that endorphin rush that you get from watching porn. So what you would have to do is obviously speak to your medical provider about this or a therapist, but you take the naltrexone before you think you're going to engage in that activity. And eventually you will learn to not have the compulsive desire to continue watching porn. And it works for a lot of people. It doesn't work for everybody, works for a lot of people. But as far as dealing with the personal shame about that, once again, let's go back to what we've been saying this whole time. It's not your fault. When you engage in an activity like that, much like gambling, which is also shameful for a lot of people because they're doing something compulsively. This is a compulsive disorder of the brain, and it's not your fault. Your neural pathways have become heightened by repetition and by simply engaging in the activity. So, and I know how hard it can be. It's like telling an alcoholic not to take a drink. I know how hard it can. If people say, "Well, just don't watch porn," it's not logical to tell somebody who's in the throes of a compulsive addiction to just stop. We know that that doesn't work. So there are obviously groups that you can join, but you could talk to your provider about using a medication to stop the reinforcement.
And we have what'll probably be our last question, although there is another comment that I'll read before we're done. Um, do you have advice on what to say to not lose a loved one's support after you have messed up with a bad drinking episode? I feel like a failure after TSM has helped me to see what I think has been a lot of success, but I don't want to lose this person.
So the question is, you're on TSM and you think you've had a lot of success, but you had a bad drinking episode. Is that pretty?
That's how I interpret the question. So, and it's what should this person say to not lose their loved one's support?
I would say I would say to your loved one, if you did not comply, for instance, I would fess up and say, you know what, you're right. I don't know why I did that, or I do know why. I felt maybe I wanted to feel the buzz I missed or something. Or if you were compliant on TSM and you just had a particularly bad drinking episode, you could say, you know what, I know that looked like a step back, but I'm going to really, really look at why I drank so much that night, if there was any underlying reasons or if there were triggers. And I ask you to be patient because the journey on TSM is not linear. I drank for years. My brain, my neural pathways were heightened and strengthened. This is a process that takes 9 to 12 months for most people. So please hang in there with me. It means the world to me to have your support. And I do really need it. And I thank you for it.
And
And
point them in our direction too,
yeah,
because we have a support group for family and friends on our Facebook. I'm happy to talk with family members. Claudia's happy to talk to family members. I've emailed back and forth with people. I've had hour and a half long phone calls with family members. If they truly support you and want to see you succeed, they're going to continue to try to find as many ways to help you do that as possible. And that I know communication can be really rough because, let's face it, human beings don't always communicate well to begin with, and then you throw in alcohol, you throw in regrettable situations, and that can just mangle the ability to properly communicate. So expressing what, as Claudia said, expressing what you actually feel.
yes, but also reminding them that you are making an effort.
You're trying.
You're trying, and that you do believe this method is working for you, and that you know it's not a magic pill, and you know that you're going to have you can even refer to me. Just say the most recognizable advocate of it has had mistakes. on TSM. So it's just say your support means so much to me, and I thank you. And I know it's not easy all the time, but I'm really trying, and I really believe I can do this. If they see your motivation and your respect of the process, there's no reason why you would lose their support. But communication, as Jenny says, is everything. And that applies to all life, to all relationships. Communication is key.
Absolutely. And Claudia, I know that you have to go because you have you have traffic and an appointment to get to. But I'll go ahead and stick around for any additional comments and questions, because there are a few. I know that. So I do want to thank you, Claudia. This was a rough one today. It was deep. And thankfully, we're following up April on the note of hope and new beginnings and sharing success stories. If any of you out there listening have a story about your success, whether it's a small accomplishment that you have felt through TSM, or whether it's one of those amazing journey stories, or somewhere in between, it doesn't matter. If it's a success, you need to celebrate every success, and we want to share your successes. Claudia and I are going to be reading people's success stories, so send those our way. You can use the contact form on the C3 Foundation website, and you can send those in. No success is too small. And that's another way to get over shame, is to truly embrace every success you have. Don't minimize your success. Well, it seems like a little thing, but you know what? If it didn't happen before, it's a success. Exactly. Just embrace it and give yourself that ability to feel good about yourself and something that you've accomplished, because those little successes build into bigger successes, and every success will then reinforce, especially if you celebrate those successes, it will reinforce your self-worth. And the more you build your self-worth, that pushes the shame farther away from your daily life. So thank you, Claudia. I know that you've got to go. No,
it's all good. I had such a good time today. I know that this is a difficult and can be a shame-producing subject. And if during anything I said or Jenny said that you felt that feeling or memories came back, please take that time to ask yourself why, and to say it's not your fault, and to love yourself and forgive yourself. And that is part of this journey. So I wish you all love. I wish you much happiness. This is Passover and Easter, and time for rebirth and growth as human beings. And if you need support, ask for it. And if you are the one supporting somebody, solid, dedicated, consistent, simple, quiet love is, if you don't know what to do, just send a heart via text or a thinking of you. All right. Thank you, everybody. Jenny, you were fabulous today, as always.
So were you. All
right. Mwah! Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, Claudia.
Take care.
All right. I'm going to shift this a little bit so that... all right. We'll move the stuff off my face, get rid of the logos. Thank you so much, everybody. So we still have a couple of things in the chat here. Esther, I see, on my last binge, I said something that I don't remember and I don't know what to do about it, which is causing shame and humiliation. Really, about all you can do is apologize. And if you know that when you're binging, that you're blacking out, try to add some mindfulness in retrospect. I know that when you're actually drinking, it can be very difficult to stop and say, wait a minute, so what am I doing? Why am I feeling this? you know, very few people, especially in a binge, have the ability to do that. So if you can't do that in the moment, be gentle with yourself. But afterward, look and instead of focusing on the shame and I did something that I regret and I don't even remember it, try to remember what were you thinking? Can you remember what you were thinking when you were in your binge? Why, did you forget to take your pill? Did you drink through your now? Did you feel that moment where you're like, well, I could stop now, but kept drinking anyway? If you at least start looking at those things and identifying them, you might not be able to fix them right away, but at least if you become aware of them, then you can start, the more you practice looking at that and say, okay, well, I was angry, or I was hurt, I was disappointed. When you can start figuring out what the feelings are that pushed you to drink past where you would have otherwise stopped, then you can start saying, okay, so when I feel angry or depressed or disappointed, is there something else I can do? It's not an easy process. It's not one that you will fix overnight. But instead of focusing on the shame and humiliation, just once you're removed from the binge, which, you're in crisis mode in a binge. And that means that you're in a vulnerable spot. You may not be able to actually stop and think about anything in those moments. And you may still be raw from it in the days and even weeks afterward. But when you do feel as though you are able to say, okay, can I look at that and can I figure out what can I do next time to try not to repeat that? Maybe it was situational. Maybe it was the people you were around. Maybe it was just what you were feeling. But as long as you can take something from that and learn and do better, or try, at least try. Sometimes we try to do better and we don't. And that's just human because we are all fallible. But as we said earlier, it's about trying. You care. You obviously care, or else you wouldn't be here. And that care, that is the motivation that not everybody has. And so you're already a step above people who don't care and who don't worry about the consequences. Apologize. But also remember that if that apology isn't accepted, that's on them, not you. You can't force somebody to accept an apology. And if someone is unwilling to accept a sincere apology, is that really somebody that you want in your life to begin with? Because I personally don't want to surround myself with people who are going to hold grudges against me, especially when I already feel bad about it and I'm trying to fix it. So, and that can be a little harsh. The unfortunate reality is we've seen people who have had so much success on the Sinclair method and started really figuring out what's going on in their life and realized that the people that they thought were their friends or the people that they thought were in their corner never really were. And that can lead to some hard decisions and hard choices. And it's difficult. But you can't change the past. No matter how, no matter what you said or what you did, there's literally nothing you can do to go back and change that. So as hard as it is, all you can do is apologize and move on and try to do better next time. But it's not easy. So, Letitia, thank you for the subscription. Thank you, everybody, for being here. For those of you who came in late, we passed 300 followers today. So thank you all. That it's so thrilling to have built this community. Thank you for everybody who has been in the chat today. We love seeing you. I love seeing the chat moving and people talking both amongst themselves and, commenting on what we're saying and asking questions. For those of you who want to subscribe, you can hit the button below. If you have Amazon Prime, you can actually subscribe each month for free with a Prime membership. So you can subscribe with Prime, and that supports our channel. This week, I got to take our very first Twitch payout check to the bank, and it felt so good to see that we're getting a little bit back from all of these efforts as well. And thank you, Nimanomo, too. I probably mangled saying that, but thank you for your Prime subscription. There is a donate button on our profile. There's never any obligation to donate, but we've got our Streamlabs link so that it doesn't take any fees from us. And next week, we are going to have a special guest, Barbara Peterson. She's going to be talking about her TSM journey, and she's called it, Better Living Through Chemistry. And Barbara has been one of our moderators on the Options Save Lives forum for several years now. I don't even remember how many years. It's been so long. And so she's going to come on live with myself and Claudia next week, and she's going to talk a little bit about how 5 years on the Sinclair method has affected and changed her life for the better. So definitely tune in next week. We'll have our April schedule up on all of our social media channels by tomorrow, since tomorrow is April 1st. And so we're so happy that you guys are spending part of your afternoon here with us. And we'll have it highlighted and ready for replay. And we'll have this up on our YouTube channel. We have an intern for a couple of weeks from the local college who has been taking some of these videos and splicing them into smaller clips for us. So he's going to be getting a copy of this and taking chunks out of the talk so that specific points that we made can be shared individually, so that if something is a bit more relevant for you to use with your family member or your support system, that you don't necessarily have to give them a 2-hour video to see the 1 or 2 points that you would like to share with them. So we'll be doing that and getting that together. That might be a couple of weeks, but we'll work on that as well. And so if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to stick around. If not, it is 6:00 here on the East Coast, and so yeah. Well, thank you, Letitia. What Claudia and I do, it's honestly, we get inspired. And that's one of the reasons why we're collecting the success stories. When I started with C3 back when it was only literally a month old, I started out working for C3 making $150 a month. And some of those months we were so small, Claudia literally pulled money out of her own account to pay me personally. And so we have always done this because we are so inspired by the people who are out there using the Sinclair method, being courageous and making the changes that they want to make in their lives so that they can live life to its fullest and have a better quality of life. And I constantly tell people that, you know, you couldn't pay me 20 times what I'm making right now because it doesn't compare to the emails that say, hey, I'm alive today because of the work you guys did. I'm alive today because I saw Claudia's TEDx talk. I'm alive today because I saw One Little Pill. There's nothing that can be put on that monetarily because we are so inspired that we just continue to do this because you guys have so much courage and so much perseverance, and any way we can support you is like that's the best thing that we can do. Putting a little bit more light in this ever darkening world. So I'm glad that we inspire you guys, but you guys inspire us equally. And, and we're proud of all of you, and we celebrate your successes, and we feel your heartache when you run into roadblocks, and we want to give you all the tools that you can have so that you can figure out and empower you to make the decisions that are right for you and help remove those roadblocks so that you can achieve success. So thank you all. We appreciate you, and we will see you next week. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Be gentle with yourselves and forgive yourselves. It's not your fault. And for support systems when your loved one's in crisis, just remember, if you can remember that it's not about you and focus on your loved one's crisis, you will be able to support them that much more, and you'll both be better for it. So lots of love, everybody. We're always available. So contact form comes to me. Anything relevant for Claudia, I pass along she's got her email out on all the social media sites as well. So have a great week. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.